Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. Welcome in. We're so thrilled you've joined us for our webinar, How to Secure the Future, Print Security Hacks for 2024. I'm Katie Frank, a demand generation manager at PrinterLogic, and our speakers today are Greg Smith, our principal architect, and Justin Scott, our director of DevOps and security. Let's go ahead and dig into our agenda. We'll cover what's top of mind in regards to security, talk about the current state, and of course, our favorite subject, print servers. We'll also pepper in some poll questions throughout the presentation. Let's go ahead and dig in. Greg, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. It's good to be here with you all. So just jumping right in, Justin, you're our director of DevOps and security here at Vasion. So I want to ask you, just as you look at the landscape today, just through everything that's going on, if you put your CIO, CTO hat on for a little bit and you just kind of look around, what do you feel is top of mind right now as we go into, almost 2024 now, when it comes to security, just in general?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, Greg. I think that everybody's on a journey of some sort, right? And this is not going to necessarily be how everybody's thinking about it, but here at Vasion, we're interested in several things, starting with that whole buzzword of zero trust, where, trust nothing and verify everything. And as I mentioned earlier, that's a journey. And some people are just starting off with the topic and trying to understand what it means, and others have fully implemented zero trust, all the way down the pipe. So that's the big one. So let's talk about that a little bit. For us, our journey is, how do we get away from infrastructure, and how do we then provide access to resources that we use to do business, to everybody who's, even if they're not on our network, right? And I guess since we're talking about a journey, probably one of the first things that people are thinking about is some kind of way in which to do that. And that's, I think step one is probably some kind of federation somewhere. Maybe you're on LDAP or whatever internally in your network, and you're trying to figure out how to let people use a single sign-in to applications when they're not on the network. Well, that's going to be your federation option, at least at the beginning, through like an Azure AD or something like that, throwing that up in the cloud, and then piping in those apps so that people can access them as you're starting to eliminate infrastructure and move to SaaS applications. And then next, a little further down the line is like getting away from the even, managing domain controllers and GPOs and access that way, and in instituting some kind of IDP. Many people are moving to Okta or Azure AD, or Ping, or those kind of resources. So that's not the whole story of zero trust, of course, but the persona part of it, that's a good start right there.
Right. So you mentioned Active Directory because, man, I remember almost 25 years ago migrating from NT4 to Windows 2000 and bringing those legacy domains into Active Directory and starting to stand these environments up. And that was groundbreaking 25 years ago. But like you said, we're on this infrastructure elimination journey, and everybody is at a different place. So as we bring these things up, it's not like we're going to wake up tomorrow and snap our fingers and then boom, nobody has any more infrastructure. All of AD is gone, right? It is a process. So,
Well, and it might not even make sense, Greg, to like completely eliminate all your infrastructure either, right? So,
right. Yeah. But as much as you can, right? Like, because there's stuff you have to do to that, right? Like, so if we take a look at, what are some of the things that you have to deal with as it comes to that infrastructure that has to remain, as you're kind of on this journey of pushing things up to the cloud?
I'm sure a lot of people on the call are like, well, I got to patch that stuff. I got to buy licenses for those servers, those operating systems, or those applications that are running. I need to have staff that can manage that stuff. I've got to consider network rules and all of that, right? Like that still remains, and that still has to be top of mind, is protecting and managing that stuff. But reducing the attack surface by moving to SaaS is a really interesting and appealing, point of view, at least from my perspective, for those who are trying to find better ways and more exciting, fun projects to work on. Let's reduce infrastructure, give that infrastructure to somebody else to take care of that I trust, right? We'll talk about that in
Right.
a minute. And then I can go do like really cool, important things in the organization.
So you mentioned trust, right? Like in a zero trust model, and we're talking about trust. There's a way to trust, and just like you said, trust but verify, right? Or trust nothing but verify everything. That's exactly what these compliance organizations do. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's international standards. There's people that are smarter than us that said, hey, you know what? If you really want to care about what you're doing, and here's some frameworks for you. Follow these frameworks, and then you're doing a good job, right? And it's not necessarily all encompassing. Doesn't mean you're perfect, but at least it gives you and your customer, well, it gives us a framework to go off of and to go institute things to protect those environments. And then it also, gives your customer kind of a frame of mind that these guys care and are doing things that are international standards, and that a third party is coming in and verifying that we're doing. We're not just saying this; like we're being validated against that.
Yeah, and I like how you use the word customer because, like in IT, you know, we have customers too, right? Like those are our end users, right? So you may be in IT in any vertical, your customers are your end users, and so while you're trying to secure this stuff that we have to manage, and implement zero trust and all of those sorts of things, you have to do so in a way that allows your customers, your users, to still function and work, right? So
Yeah.
it's like you said, it's a journey, right?
Right.
So, Katie, I think we have a poll question coming up here.
Yes. So they both mentioned how zero trust is a journey. So in what time frame do you plan to implement zero trust? Now, which is what we would recommend, 3 to 6 months, 7 to 12 months, or is it not a priority for you? And if it's not a priority, please let us know why in the chat. We'd love to have more context surrounding that. So we'll move to polling now. So yeah, let us know now, 3 to 6 months, 7 to 12 months, or is it not a priority?
And a lot of people are probably well on the way of this journey, right? So I imagine we're going to see some nows. Um, Now could absolutely encompass 6 months ago or a year ago, right? If you're in the middle of it. Um, but I figure everybody is at least somewhere on this journey or it's top of mind.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind
it
of
looks
interesting.
like.
They're either doing it now or it's within the next year, at least from what I'm
Yeah.
seeing on the
Mm-hmm.
elections. There's a few. There's one that says it's not a priority. Be interesting to hear more about that.
All right, it looks like we've kind of leveled off. So it looks like seven to now is the winner. And we love to see that and would love to be a part of that journey with you. Uh, Next up, we have that 7 to 12 month range, and then followed by 3 to 6 months. And then three people said it wasn't a priority, which, yeah, let us know in the chat why it's not a priority. We'd love to have that context.
And zero trust is such a massive topic, right? Like it's not there's not just a single thing with zero trust, right? Like
Yeah.
there's so much involved in it.
Yeah.
Well, so before we kind of talk, I mean, this is about print security, right? So where are we in the current state of printing, right? Probably every single person or the vast majority of people are still leveraging print servers. And so it's a piece of infrastructure that's in your environment, right? It's been kind of the thing that we've done for the last 25 years, right? Like we talked about that migration to Active Directory, and that's kind of, I mean, even before then, I mean, I guess for a little while we were doing this kind of stuff on systems like Novell, right? Which, ironically enough, is just about the time where we got our start um, as a company. But these things have been around forever, right? And so I feel like there's a there's a little bit of this if it's not broke, don't fix it mentality as it comes to print. Um, and so I want to kind of dig into this topic, but before we do, Katie, I really want to kind of find out Just from the people who are here, how many print servers do we have? If we kind of look at the landscape of our attendees here, how many print servers do we have in these organizations that are represented?
Yeah, so our options are 1 to 10, 11 to 25, 26 to 50, or 51 plus. And if you have 51 plus print servers, we are so sorry and would love to hear more about your experience managing 51 plus print servers. So let's move to the polling. Again, those options are 1 to 10, 11 to 25, 26 to 50, or 51 plus. Looks like most people are in that 1 to 10 range, which is pretty typical, I would say.
Yep. You would be surprised at some of the organizations we've talked to that, I mean, talking about a global organization, right? Like we'll go into environments and we'll talk to them. We've had people have up to 140, 150 print servers scattered around the globe. And it's just, well, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but it's quite a handful. Let's just say that.
Yeah, looks like mostly everyone's in that 1 to 10 range, and we got one lone person managing 11 to 25.
So I've got a question. If we just hit, thinking about print servers, Justin, if I were to ask you, just out of all of the things that people have in their minds, what is a print server? What is its function? What do you do with it? What's the benefit?
I mean, fundamentally at its core, it's a machine, a box, a server somewhere on your network that's facilitating this, your print drivers. It's where you put them, and print queues for the various printers on your network at its basic core, right?
Okay, cool. So before we go on, I would like to challenge everybody, if you would amuse me here. If you go to Google and go to Google Images Search and just search for print server, I think you're going to be surprised. Maybe you'll be surprised at what you're going to see. It's not what you would expect. Chances are, if you go to Google Images Search and you search this, you're going to see a little device that looks like this. So I'm going to date myself here. Back in my day, in the 90s, right? Like we're getting our start in IT. We had these things all over the place when we had printers that we were managing, and they didn't have network cards. They were just dumb printers, right? And you'd hook it up to a computer through a parallel port. And well, printers are expensive, right? So we decided to say, okay, well, how do we allow multiple people to print documents at the same time to the same printer, right? It's not economical to have a printer per user, right? So how do we share these things out? And so the first print server was born, right? And I'm not saying, I mean, this is a picture of an HP Jet Direct box. I'm sure many of you will recognize this. But the entire concept is to allow multiple users to print documents to a single printer, right? And basically the job of an HP Jet Direct or any print server is to queue incoming print jobs, because printers are inherently dumb. You send data to it and it spits it out like an output device, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing that we don't think about. And I don't know if this is just amazing marketing by print server or software manufacturers, or we just haven't kind of hit the pause button and take a look at this. But every networked printer has a built-in print server already. That's its sole purpose in life. So I don't understand how we got to the point where we started sticking Windows servers, print servers, in front of print servers. Like nowhere else in IT do we do this with no other technology other than print, right? Like we have servers in front of servers that are performing legitimately the same function. So some fun facts there. And then another fun fact in question form, Katie,
Yes, we're bending the rules a little bit here, and it's not a poll question per se, but it's a trivia question. What year did HP release JetDirect? Your options are 1989, which is a very popular year right now, 1991, 1995, or 1998. So, yeah, curious to see what everyone thinks here. What do we think the right answer is without Googling?
Yeah, no Googling.
No
We can see.
cheating.
We can tell. We can tell.
For those of you who voted 1991, you are correct. Congratulations on getting that right. You don't win a prize for getting this trivia question correct, but you could win a $50 gift card at the end of the webinar. So stay tuned for that.
Going back to our land of print servers real quick. Justin, you made a comment that is actually really important, right? And what people are looking for, like, when you stick a print server in front of a print server, the way we described, really the only benefit you're getting out of that thing is a place to centrally store drivers, right? And as soon as you implement your second print server, that entire benefit goes out the window because now you have two things to manage. You have two things to keep up to date. And you have a laundry list of downsides, right? So you've got the single point of failure that is inherent in a print server, right? Like if you have multiple people that are printing print jobs through a single thing and that thing goes down, well, now you have multiple people that cannot print to any printer, right? If you only have one print server, if you have two, you've got half of your user base that can't print, right? The other thing that creates is a natural choke point, right? And a lot of people don't think about latency in terms of printing. But if you've got one thing that is responsible for all of the spooling, all the collection of all jobs, which we're going to come back to, that can get really congested, right? And what happens when a service starts choking? It dies, and then nobody can print. And then guess what happens? You get help desk calls, right? And your help desk calls are not super helpful, right? You're getting, if I had to put money on it, I would bet the help desk call goes something like, help, I can't print. And that's like all the information you have, right? So you as an IT guy, what do, Justin? You have to figure out like every single step along the way, where could this thing be failing, right? Like, is it the network? Is it the print server? Is it the spooler service? What print server are you attached to? What printer are you printing to?
NIC cards, network traffic,
Yeah.
Subnet that the printer's on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's all kinds of things, right? So, and your end users probably, I mean, unless they're tech savvy, they probably don't know this, right? So it takes you 30 minutes to figure out why somebody can't print. And the first time you get a help desk ticket saying I can't print and you realize the spooler's down, guess what? The floodgates are about to open, right? The print server doesn't help you deploy printers to users. They still have to go find it, or you're developing scripts and GPOs, which are hit or miss at best. The other thing that we need to keep in mind is that in IT, the turnaround time, or not the turnaround time, but the average tenure of an IT person today is far less than where it was 10, 15 years ago, right? So 10, 15 years ago, you may have had your scripting guru who is just around and he wrote all this stuff. Nowadays, people are job hopping after 3-4 years, right? So if you have somebody and you have that turnover, who's going to go and maintain all these scripts? Who's going to maintain the GPOs? We already talked about help desk tickets. But man, Justin, operational costs. I mean, from a DevOps perspective, you deal with this every day, right? Like, so, I mean, what do you think in terms of operational costs that may not be top of mind when we don't think of VM costs money, right? But there are costs there.
Of course, I mentioned a little bit earlier, you got equipment, you've got people, you've got software licenses, you've got help desk tickets, all, there's, the list goes on and on, all related to that cost. And then the next one is, you have a security concern. You may not think about that, but you got a security concern with that device, right?
Yeah.
and
I
that's
mean, it
huge.
goes back to what we were talking about before, with the network congestion and latency. Guess what? If I have a single machine where every single document printed in the entire organization has to flow through and I'm an attacker, I mean, that seems like a pretty legit target, right? In fact, I don't know if there's a higher value target. I mean,
Well,
what value do you place on that?
I mean, if you're a savvy hacker, you just go out to LinkedIn and find out who the HR resources are, maybe do a little social engineering to find out what building they're in and potentially figure out what print server they're printing from and go get HR info or executive info or where's the legal team printing from. And, so those are things to think about.
Absolutely. And if I can attack that print server and I can read every single spool file that goes through it, well, now I can sell that information. I can extort you. I can blackmail you. I've got a ton of stuff that I can do. And, God forbid it's something like patient information, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the HIPAA fines are not cheap,
No.
right? So $100 to $50,000 per violation, up to $1.5 million a year. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? I mean,
Well, that's the
there's
TIPA.
tons.
That's TIPA, right?
Yeah, that's just HIPAA, right? Not to mention like criminal penalties, civil, legal concerns, right? Like there's all sorts of costs involved there, not to mention the damage of reputation for your business, right? And these things are, when we talk about vulnerabilities and attacking a print server, it's not like this is unprecedented, right? There are countless CVEs, right? So Kaspersky reported there are 65,000 print spooler vulnerabilities or attacks between July of 21 through April of 22. That's somewhere on the order of what, like 250, 300 an hour
Yeah.
attacks?
Yeah, it'd be fun to
I
have
mean,
somebody go do the math on that and throw that in the chat. But yeah, something like that.
yeah, I know. It's an insane amount. And there have been some pretty remarkable attacks that have been pulled off, right? Like everybody remembers Print Nightmare, and that fun we all had, right? Where you wake up after Patch Tuesday and all of a sudden nobody can print. Um, and what was worse was Microsoft's response to it. Oh, just disable the print spooler. Yeah, okay. Uh, so next, right? So then they released patches, and the patches were a bigger pain in the butt than the vulnerability. So people just, instead, like we had to grant local users admin rights to install their own drivers. So what do people do? I bet some of them, IT help desks are still dealing with print drivers installing, right, on end users' workstations. The other half probably gave in and either disabled the policy or just granted their end users admin rights, which is a scary proposition in and of itself, right? And then Justin, you brought up, when we were talking about this, you brought up Stuxnet.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Stuxnet, because that was
That's a fun one
super
to go
interesting.
read about. It's a fun one to go read about. So the NSA had a suite of hacking tools, basically, called Stuxnet, and it's at the time, we were trying to figure out what the Iranians were doing with their nuclear programs, and we were able to utilize Stuxnet to infiltrate Print Spooler, Windows Print Spooler, in the Iranian nuclear facility that had, was doing the spent rods, and we were able to, take over that network and do all kinds of fun things with the centrifuges, and because the centrifuges spin too fast or not spin at all, that all hamper their abilities to make uranium. So that's a fun one to go read about. But that was a principler. That was the initial attack vector for us. We brought down the nuclear capabilities or uranium producing capabilities of a foreign nation, with a principler bug.
Yeah, it's insane. The list grows by the day, right? Like Print Nightmare is not going to be the last vulnerability. It's only a matter of time before somebody finds another one and exploits it and does some serious damage, right? So, all that being said, how do you fix it? Like, We know this is a problem. We know these things aren't really providing value outside of a storing drivers, and only if you have one, and they have a laundry list of, downfall pitfalls. How do we fix it? We can't have any more print servers. Like, if you have a printer that has a network card or a wireless card, it has a print server built in. I promise you, you can have multiple people print to that printer at the same time, like out of the box, just direct IP, right? So that's kind of what we do. That's exactly what we do.
It was
So
kind of funny, Greg, or before the call started, someone said just throw your print servers like out the window.
absolutely. Well, printer, I don't know if it was print servers or printers.
Print or something like
Either way,
that.
I'm sure all of IT would rejoice if that was the case, right? Um, I mean,
Yeah,
the
how about we
fact of the
just don't
matter
print
is,
anymore? We just
look,
don't print
nobody
anymore,
wants to
right?
be the print server guy, right? Like, nobody went and got certifications and went to school and learned all of this stuff to deal with print servers. Like, nobody wants that job. So that's why, like, they've got to go, right? So what we do, and this is going to be a semi shameless plug of what we do, but this is why we believe in what we do, because we understand the pain that you guys go through managing these things. Um, we take your existing printers off of a print server. We discover them, just what's in your environment, and we put them in a SaaS managed admin console. It's in the cloud. There's nothing for you to host. It's all just up there. And it's a management platform, right? So if you're looking at this slide, we make a very clear line of distinction between what we call a management plane of where you manage your environment, and the data plane where all of your print data is. So our solution facilitates managed direct IP from a SaaS-based console. And
To be clear,
it's
Greg,
really
that's one management console for all of your printing in all of your
correct.
locations, on all of your floors, anywhere.
Yes. Correct. No matter what type of printer you have, it can be a multifunction, it can be a label printer. If it has a signed Type 3 driver, we can manage it, right? We are that driver distribution mechanism and platform. And the way that we do that, and we're printer agnostic, we're endpoint agnostic. So whether you're dealing with Windows machines, Mac machines, Linux machines, thin clients, VDI, you name it, we can typically integrate with it. We have a client agent that runs, and it's like group policy on steroids designed specifically for print. And it's not like writing scripts and GPOs. Anybody can go and do this. The admin console is super simple to set up. And, so outside of just facilitating print, we've got a slew of other fundamental functions and solutions to help you in that zero trust journey that we talked about, right? Because it is a journey. You're going to be at a different place tomorrow than you were today, and you need a solution to get you from where you are today to where you're going, right? So that includes stuff like off network support, printing across zero trust boundaries. How do you do that without shifting the burden of managing a print server to now managing firewall rules? How do you do that, right? Multiple IDP support, including Active Directory, because you may be on Active Directory today, but you're going to Azure AD tomorrow. You need a solution that's going to get you from point A to point B, right? And then things like, we didn't even talk about physical security, but that goes hand in hand with the HIPAA stuff, right? Like, if somebody prints a document and it's just sitting on a paper tray and somebody goes and grabs it, that could be potentially a very big deal, right? So secure release functionality, mobile printing and release, right? We're living in the era of COVID. Maybe somebody doesn't want to go and touch a printer that 40 other people have touched that day. They can release it from their phone, right? Like, if you forget your badge at home, you can get a temporary badge. If you forget your phone at home, you're turning around. You're going to get your phone. And so mobile printing, mobile release. And then finally, from a solution standpoint, we take security very, very seriously. That's why we have a director of DevOps and security in Justin, who works tirelessly on maintaining compliance with ISO and SOC 2 certification standards.
I mean, we're an extension of your IT. When you give us stewardship over your print environment, you should trust that we're protecting that environment, because those attack vectors we talked about, they just shift from you to us, right? And we don't want you to worry about that. So we'll do all the worrying on our side, and providing the infrastructure and the network security around that, and the compliance around that, and the processes that help us, be more secure.
So while that was kind of a, just a rundown of how we work, how we operate, we realized, look, there's a lot of different print solutions out there. And at the end of the day, we just got to get people to realize that print servers in and of themselves are redundant, right? So if you are searching for a solution, we would love for it to be us. But if it's not, and if you are doing some searching, I do have, I'd say, a list of questions that I would recommend asking your print vendors, right? Are you a serverless solution? Is this something that I have to maintain? Is this something that I have to patch, or do you do the patching for me, right? Are you true SaaS, or is this a print server in the cloud, right? Because if we were just talking about taking your existing print server and throwing it in the cloud and calling it a day, that's really not helping you. You're shifting the single point of failure from one location to another. Now, if the WAN goes down, nobody's printing, and that's still a bad day for you, right? So again, the way we kind of operate is we shift just the management platform up to the cloud, and we keep everything else is local. So if the cloud goes away and we've already installed printers on your workstations, Betty Lou over there trying to print her, invoice is still going to be able to print her invoice. And she's not even going to know that anything is down. Hand in hand with that, does my print data stay local? Does it stay on my local network? That's kind of the whole idea behind a distributed print model like this. There is no single attack vector. I can't go and attack a single thing and see every single document that you're printing. The people who are doing the printing are doing the spooling and sending it direct to printers. We're not dealing in the land of hubs anymore, right? Like, this print data is not broadcast. We all have layer 2, layer 3 switching. That packet's going straight from the workstation to the printer. Are you ISO and SOC 2 certified? Can we trust you with the data that we're putting in your solution? And then back to the zero trust type of scenario. Do you support on-premise Active Directory? Do you support where I am today? Do you support federated authentication with SAML and OIDC? Are you going to help me get to where I'm going tomorrow, right? And then just from a provider standpoint, what are your SLAs? What is your uptime guarantee? What are your support options? Is it email only? What's that?
Just what does your patch management look like?
Yeah, what does your patch management look like? How do I get patches? Is it just patched for me? Because that would be cool, right? And it's exactly what we do. But from a support standpoint, can I call you? Can I email you? Is it a follow the sun model? What if you're a global organization? How do I get support if I'm in Asia Pac? And then finally, what are your customers saying about you, right? And so, we invite everybody to go and spend some time on G2 and take a look at what our customers are saying about us. And, we're really, really proud of that. We're proud of the certifications that we've gotten. And at the end of the day, we can't tell you what vendor to pick, but we would be happy if it was us. And we'd love to have a conversation with you to get that started.
It's time. It's time for Q&A, y'all. Looks like we got one question submitted through the chat that I want to address really quickly. And they asked, what about Azure/Intra environments?
It's a great question. We support those today out of the box, right? So the way that we do things, we integrate with Azure as well as any other SAML 2.0 provider as an identity provider. But really at our core, all we're doing is managing drivers and print queues, right? So you don't necessarily even have to have an identity provider to get started with Printer Logic. You can absolutely set that up if you wanted to get into some other things like, the secure release printing or the mobile printing, things like that, or email printing or any of those other cool things that we can do. But, step one on this journey is going to be the elimination of the print servers. Let's cut the head off the snake and let's get you to a more secure printing environment. And then absolutely integration with Azure. If you wanted to do deployments of print queues based on Azure users or groups, we can absolutely do that.
Excellent. Great answer and great question. We have two questions that I'm going to ask kind of back to back. So the first one is, what's the difference between what you do and managed print vendors?
So I'm a little confused by managed print vendors. So I'm going to assume that what you're talking about is someone who is responsible for managing the printers in your organization. And that's not what we do, right? So that's absolutely not our forte. We allow you to bring any printer you want into our platform, but what we're all about is helping eliminate the infrastructure required to make print happen in your organization, right? So if you have a contract with a print vendor or a managed print partner that's providing you with, say, toner and supplies and paper and machines and things like that, that's really not our wheelhouse, right? We're more on the technology side of it and facilitating the management of your print environment.
Yeah, I think that was the spirit of that question, but feel free
Okay.
to correct me in the chat if I was wrong. So the next part of that question is, I'm a small business consultant, not a technician. I want to know what I should advise clients on in regards to how to secure their printers.
Securing printers themselves might be a little bit manufacturer specific. I would rely on manufacturer recommendations to provide support and best practices in terms of that. But from a high level, enable HTTPS management of those printers, right? Every single printer these days that have a network port just about has a management interface. They all ship out of the box with a default password that's set. They all ship out of the box with default SNMP credentials, for instance. They typically all ship out of the box using HTTPS. Those are probably the first three things that I would go and remediate, right? Enable HTTPS for management of that printer. Change your password to something far more secure than whatever the default is, right? Using your password management practices. Set up federated authentication if the print manufacturer allows it. And then change your passwords for SNMP retrieval, those sorts of things.
Next question is, can printer logic mark drivers that are installed as vulnerable versus non-vulnerable where we need to update them?
That is an awesome question. And the answer may surprise you. The answer is no. And the reason why is because we offer an even better way to do it. If there's a driver in your environment that is vulnerable, we have a driver's profiles repository page where you can see every single driver that is in your admin console. If one is vulnerable, you can change that driver throughout your entire organization. It doesn't matter if you have one printer or 1,000 printers that is using that driver in just about 5 clicks.
And those drivers need to be signed and stuff, right, Greg?
Yes, still needs to be signed, right? So signed type 3 drivers, typically acquired from the manufacturer. They will typically have, like, say for a Windows environment, you've got WHQL certified drivers, those sorts of things. But manufacturers do provide updates, and they do provide security updates, right? So, I mean, we're not going to be, I guess let me put it this way. There are plenty of customers that we have that have some old application that works really well with some version of some driver that they are using, and that application has to use that version of a driver. We don't automatically update drivers for you because you need to be in control of what is in your environment, right? So we facilitate the management of those drivers. You would log into the admin console and update those drivers as needed, and we will absolutely do the legwork for you of making sure that those drivers are kind of pushed out to the entire environment.
Excellent. And this one's kind of like company question, but I already know the answer, but I'm interested to see what you say, Greg. Who is your target market in regard to verticals and company size? I think the answer might surprise you.
We work with everybody. We work with, yeah, I work with primarily, like me personally, I work primarily with our larger global enterprise customers. Also federal DoD, federal civilian. But we also are very involved in healthcare. We are very involved in just general enterprise, not just here in America, but if you're joining us from EMEA or Canada or Asia Pac, we have representation in all of those regions. So we work from people who are huge to people who have like 25 printers, right? Very, very small organizations. And we work with everybody. We're just happy to help, right? Because we know these things are a pain in the butt to manage. And so that's our goal as a company is to help you eliminate that stress and off of your workload.
Another question we got was, this sounds great, but how do I actually make the switch?
That's the cool part, right?
So yeah, this is the cool part, right? So pretty much there is a link in the resources to schedule a demo. We would love to talk to you. We've got awesome people here that work at Vasion that would love to kind of walk you through what that process looks like. Um, as opposed to standing up a print server, if you were to stand up a print server on your own and configure everything and get the environment in and all of those things, you're looking at days of work. We can spin up an instance in our SaaS platform in roughly 2 minutes. So, and then you log in and you can start importing your printers right from your print server. And the cool thing about the way that we do this is, I mean, the last thing you want is some print vendor to come in and be like, cool, we're taking over. We're going to make this switch and it's going to be great and blah, blah, blah. And then they come in and they take over your entire environment when you're not ready to do the switch. That's not at all what we do, right? So we import everything from your print servers today. That includes what printers you have, the drivers that are being used, all of the profiles, all of the settings. We import that into our SaaS console. We start deploying those out. We can show you the self-service portal and how users can help themselves install printers as opposed to generating a help desk ticket to install printers. Huge feature. And then the only time that things ever change in your organization is when you deploy our client. And our client is super tiny, about 40 megs. You deploy it, start with your IT staff, start with one machine, right? Have that one machine attached to a print server today, install our client, watch us automatically make that migration happen, and print a job before and after. And you're not going to see a difference in operation. But what you will notice is now that print traffic is no longer going to a print server, and it's no longer has all of these bottlenecks and network congestion and latency that you typically have. And there's no more security vulnerability, right? So you roll that out slowly, as quickly as you want. Once it's throughout your organization, you can turn your print server off. You don't need it anymore.
Excellent. I think that kind of answered our next question, which is what's in it for me? That I would say that 100% answered that question, unless you have anything else to add.
No, that is what's in it for you. Getting rid of those print servers, because they're not doing anything for us to get us into this zero trust model, right?
Right.
They're not getting us there, and it's 25-year-old technology that needs to change, right? So moving from centralized spooling to distributed spooling is the way to go, and that just opens up a world of possibilities.
Yeah, your print servers are not serving you.
Correct.
So another question is, does this solution support dynamic IPs?
Great question. And yes, so whether your printers obtain IPs through DHCP, whether they're static leases or whether they're just dynamic and you do dynamic DNS registration, you can print to either IPs or FQDNs or host names if you have search domains set up. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Pretty much what our client is doing is automating the creation of direct IP printers in your organization. So if you can go to Windows and right click, add a printer and put your FQDN or host name in there, if you can print to it, so can we. We are just the legwork that makes that happen. And then the local Windows print spooler takes over. And I mean, that's really basically it. Now, what we do offer in conjunction, in addition to that, right, would be things like reporting, metrics. If you want to find out who's printing what to where, well, print server is not going to give you that. We do. Print server is also not going to tell you if you have any USB printers in your environment. We will, right? So once our client is installed on the workstation and we're looking at the spooler, we're looking at, we're seeing the documents pass through, we can absolutely, we don't manage the drivers for USB printers, right? Like those are still handled by the OS, but we can absolutely report on their usage, right? So I've talked to lots of companies that they had no idea that they even have USB printers, but printing is such a problem that I'm thinking the top vertical I'm thinking about is education, right? You've got these IT people in education school districts where like they're so overwhelmed with like making school work, they have printing problems that they just can't get to. So what do teachers do? Well, they bring in a USB printer from home and they bring it in their school, and that's how they make print work. The thing is, those things are expensive, right? So this helps you identify those problems, identify those printers that are in your environment.
Let's see. We have time for about maybe 2 more questions. Let's see. Will this take up a lot of bandwidth on our networks?
No, it will not. So no more, because traffic, like print data is print data, right? Whether it's sent to a print server and spooled and sent to the printer, or whether it's spooled at the local workstation and sent to the printer, it's the same amount of data. What you're what you're doing is speeding it up, because now it's not all funneled through a single choke point. It's just going direct to the printer, right? The network switches we have these days, I mean, I haven't looked at current specs, but I mean, it's unreal the amount of switching fabric that are in these switches, right? So they can handle print jobs. That's not a problem. And the cool thing about it is you're not sending print jobs to a server that's hosted centrally or in a data center or in the cloud, because there you would have latency, right? Traffic is only going to flow through a pipe as fast as your slowest link. We keep all that print data local. So if I'm sitting here at my desk and I have a printer sitting right next to me on the same subnet, I'm hitting a switch and that's it. I'm not hitting a switch and a router and a firewall and a WAN link and coming back down. It's just going direct IP. In terms of the reporting metrics, tiny, tiny pieces of data, right? Like what, 3K, Justin? If
Something like
that.
that.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's tiny amounts of data.
Excellent. And then we have a question about how we sell. Do we sell through channel partners, direct to end users, or both?
We do both, right? So we have awesome resellers that we work with, you know, and we also sell directly to customers, right? Now, if you do have a reseller that you would like to use, feel free to bring them on with you. Um, but if not, you can absolutely come talk to us. We'd be happy to talk to you either way.
Excellent. And we had a couple submitted more through the chat. I don't know if Greg and Justin, you want to take a look at those and see if you want to answer any of those, or if you want to go ahead and wrap up.
Yeah, I can take a couple of these. So, does it monitor supplies and maintenance and alert or order toner? So it does monitor. We do have SNMP monitoring built in, and SNMP alerting features as well. So if you do have printers that have, say, low toner or a paper jam, we can send out SNMP alerts to advise you of that. That can be sent to a distribution list. That can be sent to, say, certain people for certain printers and other people for other printers. We're pretty granular about how we do that. And then we also offer a printer status dashboard, where if you have a help desk, you can go to that dashboard and it'll just show you all the problem printers in your environment that you can just deal with before they start impacting your customers, your user base, right?
Hey, Brett.
That knocks
Greg,
that one out. Yeah.
I like this question. If we can get this, and this is maybe a loaded one, but I work for an EDU. Is there any option for printing from like a web portal or from like public Wi-Fi, but securely? Is a good one.
That's an amazing question, because that goes hand in hand with zero trust, right? As
Exactly.
you have all these BYODs that you're bringing into your network, you don't want that on your corporate network, right? So what do? You set up an isolated guest network, right? And those things are on the guest network, and there is a zero trust boundary between that and your protected corporate assets, like your printers and your servers and your stuff, right? Even though we're trying to get rid of servers, but you still have them, right? You're trying to get rid of them. Thing is, there's a zero trust boundary there, and unless you're opening up port TCP 9100, normally you're not printing across that zero trust boundary, but we do have a solution for that. And it is quite beautiful because it is all over HTTPS. It is all TLS 1.2, and it is all egress traffic. So everything goes out. We can absolutely help facilitate that in a very, very secure way, even with that print job being encrypted the entire route. So that is an amazing question to ask. I would suggest let's schedule a demo, and we'd be happy to walk you through that workflow.
Excellent. Yes, like Greg said, there's a link to schedule a demo with us in the resources section. We would love to meet with you, learn more about your environment, and potentially spin up a trial all in the one call. We do offer a free 30-day trial, so you can, like Greg has said previously, kick the tires and test it out and really, put us to our paces and see if this is the right solution for you. I'd also like to direct you to a video that's called The Secret to Better Print Management that explains a little bit more about how PrintLogic works. And then we also have a zero trust playbook for you to reference as well as you're adopting zero trust and going on your zero trust journey. So thank you for joining us today. We had a great webinar. We loved answering your questions.